Today, we take a lot of computer-generated effects in movies for granted. It has almost become a required staple of every film, especially films with action. But there was a time when movies had to rely solely on stunt doubles, animatronics, complex sets, and props. CGI stands for computer-generated imagery. It first had its breakout blockbuster debut with Jurassic Park. Previously, it was seen as just an overpriced gimmick, but to appreciate just how much CGI adds to a movie, we're taking a glimpse into the special effects world with this list of actors caught in movies without their CGI effects. Hey, don't forget to tickle that subscribe button so you can keep current with more inside looks into everyday things. Jurassic World. The original Jurassic Park series was heralded as a beacon for CGI effects when it released in 1993. Though there is something to be said of previous horror flicks like The Fly. They deserve their own credit for creating sincerely grotesque effects with set props alone. That kind of thing just can't be replaced so easily with CGI. But in any event, Jurassic Park was a huge hit, breaking records and grossing $50 million over its first weekend period, which was a lot for the 90s. A few decades later, Jurassic World broke global records. The Universal film brought in a $524.1 million around the globe. This made it the highest grossing global opening ever. I guess you could say Jurassic World really made it around the world. But would this movie create as much buzz and stunning popularity if we took away the CGI and showed instead a film about Chris Pratt being chased by humanoids in gray morph suits? Some might say yes. I'd actually pay money to see that movie in theaters myself. It really gives you some insight into Pratt's acting skills. How does he pull off such genuine fear or manage to parade around like a badass when that's what he has staring him down? Now I understand why imagination was so encouraged in grade school. It's profitable. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Another big franchise, the more recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film released in 2014, was the first time the franchise really dove into CGI. Its earlier films were known for using animatronics that were indeed impressive for their time, and these suits were indeed difficult to work in. Must have gotten hot under the collar. In fact, the actors all lost 20 pounds by the end of production, largely due to humidity. Who needs CrossFit? Just hop into a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle suit. The newer film, however, used actors in inflated suits and motion capture technology. In the film, the mutant turtles really take on a detailed and lively presence. But behind-the-scenes shots of the suits they wore looks like an Instagram shot with #NoFilters. The actors look like they are wearing inflatable furniture that used to be hip in the 90s. Still, yet in spite of how silly and funny they look, perhaps not at all like ninja heroes you would expect, their ability to take on their character's persona had people on set forgetting the motion capture suits were even there. The movie did pretty well, bringing in over $300 million worldwide, and the turtles are looking a lot more beefy and lively than the slimmer ones of the 90s. Though traditional fans might still prefer the classics. It was, after all, the highest grossing independent film ever from New Line Cinemas. We'll let you decide which one seems to provide for better storytelling. The Revenant. Just as Tom Hanks has a fondness for playing characters that have travel mishaps, Castaway, Apollo 13, Sully, Leonardo DiCaprio seems to have a fondness for playing rich megalomaniacs that are their own undoing. Seriously, how many DiCaprio films include his untimely and brutal demise by the end? He's his own spoiler. But The Revenant might be considered a break from that usual norm. In it, Leo plays a fur trapper faced with man versus wild dilemmas, which lead to man versus man dilemmas. After long-term pity and jokes from the public about Leo's constant missing out on well-deserved Oscars, this role finally landed him his first Oscar win. The film was known for being especially grueling on the cast and crew, filming in remote areas in Canada and Argentina. So it is an award that Leo has more than earned. The movie's worldwide total stands at $326 million. Many people were impressed with the bear mauling scene that occurs early in the movie. Some viewers recall the 3-minute graphic scene as being 3 minutes too long. It's not for the faint-hearted. But as real as the scene appeared, it's crazy to realize that behind the scenes, Leo was interacting with a giant blue Smurf man. Stuntman Glenn Enos, the man behind the bear, jokingly assures concerned viewers that the heavy romping between him and Leo was all consensual. But Leo's convincing acting really made you feel like you were watching a train wreck. Iron Man 2. Ah, Marvel, bringing nerdy back by turning their comic books into huge grossing monoliths of movies. They united an introverted populace with the mainstream, and now many people are becoming a part of the Marvel fandom. And of the many Marvel movies, the Iron Man series did especially well. Maybe we just like to see Robert Downey Jr. in action. But whatever the reason, he really makes flying around in a heavy metal mecha suit look like the coolest day job in the world. But what if I told you that he did most of his day job in his pajamas? That's right, working in your pajamas isn't just for stay-at-home parents and freelance writers. It's also for Iron Man. Unfortunately, nobody has yet invented a flying metal suit, though some have come up with some mighty impressive costumes that you can buy if you happen to have a few disposable thousands of dollars lying around. So rather than wearing something he'd probably have a heat stroke in, the studio made some spandex-looking onesies with sensors on them that Robert Downey Jr. could wear. They're cooler than a Snuggie, I'll give him that. Kinda hard to imagine how he pulled off such a debonair and cocky persona in a onesie. Hats off to you, Mr. Downey Jr. Well played. The Hobbit. Many die-hard fans of J.R.R. Tolkien were thrilled when they heard that The Hobbit was going to have a real-life film adaptation. But for the less die-hard fans, many of them were just as excited that there was a crazy dragon scene to look forward to, voiced by the enigmatic Benedict Cumberbatch. And before we move on, it needs to be said that Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman should be in everything together for the rest of their careers, since the duo did so spectacularly as Sherlock and Watson as well. They are toots bromance goals. That said, the encounter with Smaug the dragon in the film was chilling, and the voice acting did not disappoint. Cumberbatch really captured the low, rumbly, and terrifying voice of a giant and greedy beast. It gave chills to many in the audience. So, quite understandably, when pictures of him in his motion capture suit behind the scenes came out, it became the internet's favorite thing. It's quite a stark contrast to go from massive beast to funny British man crawling around in a strange gray suit making funny faces. But that is the nature of the art form. And Cumberbatch gets into the character stunningly well, despite his ridiculous appearance. Modern actors really have to rely on their imagination for CGI-heavy films. Deadpool. Deadpool goes down in history as the highest-grossing R-rated film in the history of forever. And as some fans are already aware, initially, studios just didn't want to make the film because they didn't think it would do well. It was only after some leaked footage made it onto the internet and fans went crazy that it was finally realized how big the demand for the film really was. It earned about a whopping $746 million globally, flying in the face of what the studio originally predicted. Such noobs. But it wasn't just an R rating on a superhero film that gave it such a massive appeal. It contains snappy wit, action, comedy, and sincerely heartfelt moments all wrapped into one. Deadpool jokes in his fourth wall-breaking manner that they could only afford to get one X-Men character to be in the film, Colossus. But the irony about that is that Wired reports Colossus was played by 5 different dudes, and in order to make this giant metal man, they used tall, wide men in a large suit. It's almost more comical than the movie itself to see Deadpool interacting with what appears to be a gray ogre. The famous Merc with a Mouth must have had a hard time resisting jokes about the costume on set, because we've all learned by now that Ryan Reynolds essentially is Deadpool. That character never turns off, and it's not method acting, it's just his persona. The Hobbit. The Hobbit makes it onto this list for the second time because Smaug wasn't the only CGI character that looked funny before all the computer touch-up. Smeagol is a beloved character for impressionists. His voice can almost always elicit cheap giggles or laughs among friends. Smeagol has become somewhat of a pop culture icon in his own right. In his appearance in The Hobbit, some came away from the scene with the feeling that they'd witnessed the most lifelike and engaging monster they'd ever seen. In his interactions with Bilbo doling out riddles to each other, Smeagol alternates between an almost childlike cuteness and a disturbing murderous persona akin to Charles Manson with an eating disorder. The visual effects supervisor responsible for such an impressive on-screen creation, Joel Letteri, won 2 Oscars over the course of the Hobbit trilogy. And he points out that the software used to create Smeagol had changed by quite a lot between the time of his first movie appearance and his more recent one. As convincing as the character is, the man behind Smeagol wears an all-white suit, covering him from head to toe, except for his face. Watching him take on the character is both funny and disturbing. If the man is married, you have to wonder if he ever breaks out Smeagol voices to annoy or scare the missus. Guardians of the Galaxy. This film was a huge hit. Whether it was because of its catchy throwbacks to classic pop and rock songs, or because of the audience that Chris Pratt seems to automatically attract, the film pulled in a crazy $771 million at the worldwide box office. Audiences were hooked on the feeling of throwing their money at this movie. Some argue that the character Groot is just an annoying mascot in the film, useful only for selling Happy Meal toys and action figures. But for others, Groot is to Marvel what Chewbacca is to Star Wars. He is the most lovable humanoid tree character in existence. Probably because there aren't that many humanoid tree characters to go around. But unlike Chewbacca, which was a man running around in a furry suit, Groot was a heavily CGI'd character. Have you ever wondered what it looked like to pull off this movie magic? It's pretty comical. At least Groot's face attached to the tall blue man was pretty well made. That is a bust I'd like to have in my yard, just to surprise guests with. Apparently, the film crew also used a fuzzy stuffed animal to stand in for Rocket during certain scenes. It was useful for them because it allowed for them to assess the proper lighting in the area so that they could animate with better realism. Life of Pi. Life of Pi, amazing movie that it was, did manage to stir up a bit of controversy more than once. At first, weird things happened at the Oscars. While the movie was claiming its awards, there was a protest going on of about 400 visual effects artists near the venue. It was called the Piece of Pie protest. I see what you did there, protesters. Visual effects artists often get laid off without pay due to bad business models. The company responsible for bringing Richard Parker to life filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and laid off more than 200 workers without pay. Later on, more controversy surfaced when a leaked email claimed a cover-up about how the real live tiger used for a couple of scenes almost drowned on set. But 20th Century Fox, the studio behind Life of Pi, denied the allegations. Even with all the weird controversy around the film, it was very successful. The struggle between the protagonist and the tiger was very realistic, and the emotional moments could penetrate the hearts of the most jaded viewers. The artistic effects throughout most of the movie were arguably ahead of the curve cinematically. So it's kind of amazing to see the weird, lifeless blue plushie that our lead actor was interacting with. Imagine sharing moments of life and death with that thing. It's almost weirder than mourning over your drifting volleyball friend named Wilson. Pirates of the Caribbean. A very large and continuous franchise, Pirates of the Caribbean has now released its 5th installment in 2017. Some of the things that make it iconic, besides how perfectly Johnny Depp plays an eccentric and inebriated pirate, include the breathtaking soundtracks produced by Hans Zimmer. For those who don't know, Hans Zimmer has produced many soundtracks that you're probably quite fond of, including the soundtracks for Inception, Interstellar, and Sherlock Holmes. The series has seen many thrilling CGI effects and CGI characters, but one of the more memorable ones is that of Davy Jones, who makes his appearance in the second movie. This second film, Dead Man's Chest, by the way, made an astonishing $1 billion at the worldwide box office. As for Davy Jones, the chilling octopus head of a persona left many viewers feeling both impressed and disgusted. The actor who played Davy Jones used speech mannerisms consistent with someone enduring a chronic sinus infection. Now that I mention it, the actor without all the CGI effects actually looks pretty sickly. Now that really does look like a sinus infection gone rogue, with a touch of gangrene. Someone could use a bit of vitamin D, but his piercing gaze in real life really translated well into the CGI'd character. You can really see the coldness in those eyes. Well, I hope you enjoyed getting a first-hand look into the world of CGI and just how much it can alter a movie. I hope you got a few chuckles out of it too. If only we could add CGI to our lives at a moment's notice. We could all be superheroes in our pajamas.